daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Global Sports Podcast Network Premier League podcast. My name is Nick Bird, here for a solo episode this Monday after what looked like a relatively boring Premier League weekend on paper. Ended up being pretty interesting, excluding the one big game between Arsenal and Chelsea, which, well, I'm obviously biased as an Arsenal fan, but I don't think quite delivered. I saw some people saying it delivered, so good for them, but I don't think the game was thoroughly entertaining. But we are going to start on that title race, and why I still see Arsenal being way ahead, because despite that 1-1 draw against 10 men, a big opportunity once that red card was given for Arsenal to keep that string of wins going, but it just wasn't. It was an Arsenal who were, I think, a bit tired maybe physically and mentally after a big week of games against Tottenham and Bayern Munich, obviously, and then coming into a game where Chelsea were just up for it more, and it's quite crap analysis, but that whole kind of Roy Keane thing of they just wanted it more, and I think it was evident to see Chelsea just wanted it more and had that extra physical capacity in them. But personally, I wasn't panicked. Looking on social media, there was complaining about the performance, which I think is fair because Arsenal were pretty bad. But after about an hour or two, most Arsenal fans I saw were pretty relaxed, not kind of continuing the crash out, so to say. And I think that is kind of part of one of the four things I have down why I think Arsenal are still way ahead is that mentality. The mentality of the squad seems far better. There was obviously the accusations that this squad was too emotional in past years from the likes of Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, and while I think that wasn't always founded in like the best examples, in terms of you think to when Ødegaard was taking photos of the cameraman after games, I think it was against Liverpool at the Emirates, or celebrating after big wins. I think that's perfectly fine. But so I don't think they necessarily said it at the right time all the time, but you can just see this Arsenal team is much calmer. I think they are motivated to get it done this year. They don't want another slip up, and it's almost transmitted to the fan base, I think, where in previous years any slip up was the end of the world. I think, again, Jamie Carragher spoke about it. I think the quote was along the lines of Arsenal always feel one bad result away from catastrophe or something like that. And it doesn't feel like that's it this year. We had the bad result against Sunderland where we drew late on thanks to Daniel Ballard equaliser for Sunderland. There wasn't really a big crash out from that. It was everyone was pretty rational. Like, we had a lot of players out. If we had the substitutes to come in, we'd probably win that game. And then, like I was saying, pretty similar for the result yesterday against Chelsea, where the players were probably a bit tired and the performance was just bad, and that's going to happen sometimes across the season, and we still managed to leave with something. So it's not the end of the world. We just have to bounce back and getting players back now. Hopefully we can stop the one-in, one-out policy of injuries, which is the next point, where injuries feel like one of the few things that can kill this Arsenal team at the moment. Arsenal fans will know about the one in, one out policy, where as soon as a player's back from injury, someone else will get injured. We saw it midweek where Madueke or Erdegaard was back, Trossard gets injured. You had Gyökeres and Jesus back yesterday, and Saliba's injured. So we've had our front line decimated. Now it seems like it's the defender's turn. So it doesn't seem like the Saliba injury should be long term. He was with the squad yesterday. They said it was just a knock in training, so hopefully he's not out too long. But that does feel like the big issue that can kill Arsenal at the moment. But that moves on to another one of my points. The depth that the transfer window was focused on has paid off, and it's getting Arsenal through kind of the tougher times they've had with that injury crisis of sorts. So I think Arsenal is kind of undisputed. They just have the best depth in the league at the moment. They may not have the best starting 11, but that depth is just so much better than anyone else's. And it's allowing them, on my final point on Arsenal, the consistency of this team and their ability to just get positive results. And I think the win against Bayern will have been huge mentally for European games. It's a bogey team for Arsenal in Europe. And while yesterday wasn't a great result, you could see all the players look down about it, and they'll want to bounce back. I truly believe that. So they've got a relatively nice game that we'll speak about in the segments coming up against Brentford. So there is a pretty nice chance to bounce back. But it'd be unfair to only talk about why I think Arsenal are way ahead without giving the points on why I think Chelsea and City will be a bit behind. I haven't put Liverpool in just because I think we can see they're not going to be like incredibly consistent, and maybe they'll improve, but they're too far away already. On Chelsea, for me, the thing that's really stands out is the discipline. Obviously, 6 red cards already, another one yesterday for Caicedo. But there's even moments where the one that stood out to me was Noni Madueke gets fouled. Sorry, he gets tackled, doesn't get fouled. And then Cucurella and Enzo Fernandez are both stood over him, like shouting and celebrating down at him. And while that's great when it's your players at the time, I think it kind of shows the poor discipline in that it's not necessary. And I believe at least one, if not both of them, were on yellow cards. And you wouldn't be hugely surprised if a referee gave a yellow card for that sort of kind of antagonizing of sorts. So, yeah, I just think the discipline, I think Chelsea fans are maybe concerned about it, but fine with kind of the general personality of some of their players. But maybe in 1 to 2 years, if it keeps letting them down, then they'll kind of be less sympathetic isn't quite the right word, but you kind of get what I mean. When I say less sympathetic to it, if it's still tripping them up. Another point, the inexperience. If they haven't gone deep into a title race with this squad, we saw it with Arsenal in 22-23. You kind of need the experience, I think. Their squad is really young. It doesn't have this kind of star quality, which was my final point. Outside of, I think, a handful of players. Obviously, Palmer is their star quality in attack. You've got Caicedo as their star quality in midfield, and I'd say Cucurella in defence, but they don't have enough of it, I think, to challenge for the title yet. I don't really care for any of their attackers outside of Palmer. I don't think there's loads of quality in their attack. Esteval is kind of the shining light in terms of the front three, and he's going to have rough games because he's 18 years old. So I think that Enzo Maresca needs to trust Esteval because he is their best winger at the moment for me. But I also can understand why he's managing his minutes a bit, because we've seen how young players have got overplayed and then got decimated from that. So those are kind of the three things: the discipline, inexperience, and lack of star quality. Man City, they have the Pep factor where he can just go on these ridiculous runs. He can work out those tactics to get them on those long runs, but I don't know if their squad is entirely built for how the Premier League currently is, especially in midfield. They then also have the Haaland factor. They seem incredibly reliant on him. They managed to win without him scoring again, so they are finally getting more goals from the rest of the squad. But if he gets injured, I don't think you can say if Haaland goes on a long run without scoring, because he just doesn't do that. And then the final thing is their defence and kind of the defensive abilities of their midfield. I think it's just not at the level of Arsenal's. And while it should be good enough to beat a lot of teams, you saw at the weekend they almost dropped points to Leeds, who they should never. You never think City should be dropping points to, especially at home. So that defence and the lack of defensive ability in their midfield, I think Nico Gonzalez has gone onto the radar massively. He's having a really strong season, but outside of kind of him and Rodri, who is struggling coming back from this ACL injury, he keeps having setbacks. There's just not a lot of defending in that midfield. Reinders isn't really a defender. Kovacic maybe doesn't have the legs. He's currently injured. You're not going to get loads of defending from Cherki, Foden. Bernardo Silva is like, it's pretty weak analysis, but he's getting older, similar to Kovacic. The legs are going a bit. I think easily bypassable is a lot of that midfield, and I think to the Villa game where he played a midfield of Bernardo Silva, Reinders, and Foden, I believe, was the other player, and Villa just ran through them constantly. So I don't think you're going to see that sort of midfield. There's going to be a Nico Gonzalez, a Kovacic, or a Rodri. I think Pep isn't going to let that happen again, but you see that lack of defensive ability if in the midfield, and while they play some nice attacking stuff. If they have to turn around and run back, I'm not entirely confident they can keep doing it. And I think the kind of TLDR of it is Chelsea and City will slip up against worse teams more than Arsenal will, because of kind of inconsistencies in their squad, their tactics, and I said Chelsea just wanted it more yesterday. I think in this overall season, I think Arsenal just want this title more than Chelsea and City, and we'll see if there's ever a point where it feels like they want it too much as we get closer to the end of the season. That could become a problem. But at the moment, it just feels like Arsenal are comfortably ahead, and they're now going into a pretty nice run of games across December, which is always quite nice when it's such a hectic and packed fixture schedule. So that's going to wrap up the first segment. I'll fire through the midweek games because we have a full fixture list for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But first, let's hear about Bioniq.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now. Your body is unique. And Global Sports.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
So, midweek games, we start off early tomorrow at 7:30 with Bournemouth against Everton. Bournemouth are 11th with 19 points. Everton are 14th on 18 points. Bournemouth are in their first kind of rut of the season. They're winless in 4. They will need a result to feel like they're bouncing back and not slipping down the table because, I mean, we're all aware of how close the table is at the moment with it's just, I mean, City are on 25 points in second. You go down to Fulham in 15th are on 17 points. Just the 8-point separation between second and 15th. So every goal is wildly changing positions in the table at the moment. So Bournemouth will want to bounce back as much as your points are so close to getting high up in the table. You're looking at that position first, and it won't feel great when they were second a few weeks ago and are now in 11th. And should they lose this weekend, they could even slip down to 15th. So if all the teams behind them pick up points, which is possible, I believe. Everton, their opponents, obviously coming into this, they had a big win on Monday last week with 10 men at Old Trafford, but followed it up with a big loss at the Hill Dickinson. A 4-1 loss to Newcastle. They need a bounce back. I think I give this to Bournemouth still, so being at home, they have the system to win, I think, and outplay Everton. I'll go with the Bournemouth winning this one. On to the next one, Fulham at home against Manchester City. Fulham in 15th place on 17 points. Man City second on 25 points. 13 of Fulham's 17 points have come at home, with their only drop points at home are a loss to Arsenal and a draw to United. Man City are struggling away from home a bit. 2 wins, 1 draw, 3 losses away from home. Just 7 of their 25 points have come away from home. This feels like a game they should win. Obviously, they won't want any kind of shakiness after, I think it's fair to call it a poor week. They obviously rotated in the Champions League and lost. They lost in the league before that against Newcastle, and then they came very, very close to dropping points to Leeds at the weekend. So I think they'll want a confident and comfortable win away at Fulham, but Fulham are a team who just haven't ever, it doesn't feel like they've ever really feared Manchester City in recent years, and they're definitely capable of getting a spoiler here, but I'll go with the safe pick of a Man City win. Then the final game tomorrow evening, the biggest game of the midweek fixtures, Newcastle at home against Spurs. Newcastle in 13th on 18 points, Spurs in 12th also on 18 points. You've got a strong home record against a strong away record. Newcastle have only lost to Arsenal and Liverpool at home Spurs have only lost to Arsenal away, obviously, last week. This feels like too big of an ask for Spurs, despite that strong away form. They are in a bad place mentally, I think. A really poor loss against Fulham, where you had that ludicrous goal from Wilson after Vicario doesn't just clear it or kick it as high into the stands as possible. And there were big boos at full time. There was boos for Vicario. You had Thomas Frank kind of protecting his squad, saying that the boos weren't on. And I even saw something today to say there was a team meeting amongst Spurs players where they were unhappy with their fans or something along those lines. There's a weird atmosphere at Spurs at the moment, and while they were high up in the table just a few weeks ago, it always felt like a false position because they weren't playing well and they were somehow still getting points, and now you're seeing the true struggles, and Frank is already on thin ice, it feels like. A loss away at Newcastle isn't a bad result. Newcastle are incredibly strong at home, but more losses aren't going to be accepted by Spurs fans. And with them winless in 4 in the league, with losses to Fulham, Arsenal, Chelsea, and a draw to Manchester United in there, they're going to need to see positive results quickly, or we could see a new manager by the turn of the year, it feels like, at White Hart Lane. So, I mean, it's pretty clear I'm going with Newcastle in this game. The first game of Wednesday, Arsenal at home to Brentford. Arsenal obviously first in the league, 30 points, 5 points clear of second. Brentford in 10th place on 19 points. This feels like a chance for Arsenal to rotate a little bit. It does feel like we saw legginess against Chelsea, so maybe we'll see some changes. Arsenal getting players back. Obviously, Gyökeres has a good chance to come in and play, it feels like. I wouldn't be surprised to see Noni Madueke start over Saka potentially even. So, yeah, while Arsenal need to keep the momentum going, they need to make sure the squad is fresh so they're not dropping points, and to trust that depth I spoke about earlier. Brentford really poor away from home this year. 1 win, 5 losses away. Their only win coming against West Ham. This is going to be a difficult game. Brentford have managed to get really strong results against Arsenal in previous seasons, but this is going to be a tough ask with the form that Arsenal are in, and Arsenal are incredibly strong at home. Hence why I will be going for an Arsenal win, obviously. Final game I'm going to talk about in this segment before we hear about Zencastr. Brighton at home against Villa. This is 5th place Brighton on 22 points against 4th place Villa on 24 points. Brighton feel like the kind of unspoken overachiever at the moment. They're up in 5th place and it doesn't feel like they've been spoken about at all. Which is kind of weird because obviously a couple of years ago it felt like Brighton were getting spoken about all the time, and then almost since Hurtsler has come in there, it just doesn't feel like they're ever getting spoken about. And I don't know whether it's a thing of their fans aren't a particularly loud fan base. We know what Brighton are at the moment and what Brighton are gonna be in terms of getting their recruitment right and then selling players on and replacing them even better. So they do. I think they deserve some attention, and a win here against Villa maybe gets them that, as it would move them into the top 4. Villa, on the other hand, are weirdly 4th in the table, but I saw someone speaking about this yesterday. I went to check when writing my notes for this episode. They are 19th in Opta's expected points table. So if you're unaware of expected points, I'm sure everyone is aware of kind of expected goals by now. Expected points is a kind of accumulated tally of lots of different stats around a game, and then how much you deserve to win of sorts. I think different companies use different methods in calculating it. I went with Opta because they are kind of the most reliable stats platform, and they have Villa second bottom in terms of expected points, above Burnley and 0.3 points behind Wolves. Obviously, it's not a perfect system, but I think it's quite an interesting point, and it'll be interesting to see kind of what is the truth with Villa. Will that expected points tally catch up with them, or will they regress to the kind of the mean of their expected points? So that wraps us up on the first 5 games. Let's hear about Zencastr and then wrap up on the final 5 games of this midweek.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out as the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone, AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the description to learn more about Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports.
So the final 5 games, kicking it off with Burnley against Palace. Burnley 19th place, 10 points. Palace 9th place, 20 points. Burnley are beginning to fall away. I just spoke about the expected points table. They have the worst expected goals against and the worst expected points. They are 7 expected points worse off than Villa, who are second lowest, and it does feel like West Ham and Forest are sorting themselves out, and Burnley are going to need to start picking up points sharpish if they kind of want to stick with them and not fall into like just an expected relegation that Wolves are already in. From Palace's point of view, a bad week where they probably should have beaten Strasbourg. They missed 2 open goals, and then they get beaten by 2 set pieces after a really strong first half against Manchester United. I'm not sure how long Ismail Assar is going to be out, but that is going to be a potential problem for them. And you're seeing kind of Glasner's unsatisfied. It does feel like him leaving is inevitable probably at the end of the season. Mateta's contract talks are stalling, and I don't think it's the worst thing for them to cash in at the moment. I did see Palace fans even speaking about how he's not been particularly great this year, and while it's difficult to replace goals, especially in the Premier League when you have a trusted goal scorer at the moment, I think it's maybe not a terrible thing to cash in on someone's desperation for a striker and sell him, and then make a smart bit of recruitment, which Palace have done quite a lot recently. So I think you kind of just have to go Palace here. I think Burnley may be done already. Their squad is just nowhere near, and I spoke about their expected goals against, the expected points. They're really struggling after it felt like they had a pretty decent start and have been pretty strong at home. I think they need a positive result here, or a lot of people will kind of have them as down already. Moving on to the team below them, Wolves 20th place, 2 points at home against Forest in 16th place on 12 points. Wolves, I wrote, just at least try to make your fans' week a bit better for once. They're already down. It doesn't feel like there's much saving them, even with potential recruitments in January. It's such a sad sight when you look at the table and see them on 2 points. From a Forest point of view, this does feel like a chance for them to pull away. I think it's early to say, but I think they're safe. They have the quality. I don't think they were ever in any real danger, especially after they brought in Dyche and reverted to that more defensive style of play. Leeds play Chelsea, Burnley obviously play Palace, like we already spoke about. This is definitely a chance where I think Leeds and Burnley will both drop points, and Forest can start to pull out a gap on those bottom two, bottom three of West Ham, Leeds and Burnley. Moving on to one of those teams, Leeds in 18th on 11 points versus Chelsea, who are third on 24 points. Farke is beginning to be under pressure. I saw today if he loses against Chelsea and I believe it's Liverpool they have after that, then the expectation is he'll be sacked, which is, I mean, a little bit harsh to judge it on those two games, but kind of fair enough. They were already looking at sacking him in the summer. It did feel like he was going to go at some point this year. It would have been incredibly surprising for him to survive this full season. Can they get a little bit of magic at Elland Road under the lights? Get a strong atmosphere against a team they have a rivalry against in Chelsea? Will their players be up for it and aggressive in this game? And then from a Chelsea point of view, just ride this wave. They've had a really strong week. Obviously, the win against Barcelona was easier than I think anyone would have expected. And then a really positive result with 10 men against the league leaders. Ride this wave, see where this title challenge can go for Chelsea. You don't want to have that strong week and then slip up straight away against a team who are looking like they'll go down. But I will still go for Chelsea. I don't think I said it, but you kind of got the gist. I'm going for Forest in that previous game. On to the penultimate game, Liverpool at home against Sunderland. Liverpool 8th place, 21 points. Sunderland 6th place, 22 points. From a Liverpool point of view, was it just that they faced West Ham at the weekend, or are they actually making some improvements? For Sunderland, this is a chance to go scalp hunting, I think. There's no pressure on them. A big away ground for a team who are really struggling at the moment. I think they can make this incredibly difficult for Liverpool. And I almost favour them for a result. I think I'll go for a draw, though, in this game. I just think Sunderland will be able to frustrate Liverpool enough. And from my point of view, I think it was just West Ham. And that Liverpool aren't kind of suddenly back. They didn't play great. They just got the win. So I go with a draw, which I think is the first time I've gone for a draw in this final game, the only game on Thursday night. Manchester United at home against West Ham. Man United 7th place, 21 points. West Ham 17th on 11 points. I think this is going to be a challenge for Man United in terms of, can you break down a low block? We saw them really struggle against a 10-man low block last week against Everton. You're going to have another low block against Nuno here with West Ham. From a West Ham point of view, this is kind of the next game in a really difficult December/Christmas run. And where are you going to be able to steal points? Because, like I was saying, Leeds and Burnley have tough games when I was speaking about the Forest game. If West Ham can steal a point here and kind of build their own gap, and while it would still be a small gap at that point, I think there is a chance for West Ham to get a draw here. I will still go with Man United because they should still be able to beat this West Ham team. There's definitely a world where Man United just can't do anything against a low block, which is kind of, I have similar feelings about the Chelsea team in terms of ability to break down a low block, but Chelsea are definitely more capable of doing it than Man United in my eyes. That wraps us up, though, for the 1st of December episode of the Daily Premier League podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Nick Bird. Thank you for joining me, and enjoy this midweek football. I believe the other Nick Britton, is doing Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we should both be on Thursday's episode to likely recap all the games from Wednesday, potentially a little bit of a preview of West Ham and United and whatever other news happens in the Premier League this week. Thank you for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your days, evenings, afternoons, whatever. This has been, like I said, the Global Sports Podcast Network Daily Premier League podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. Enjoy your days.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.